They say when something feels too good to be true, it probably is. The first time I saw the lake, it was just after sunrise. Mist rising off the water like it was breathing, a couple of ducks gliding across the still surface, and not a single sound of traffic, just wind, trees, and that peaceful, quiet city folks pay thousands to fake with sound machines. I stood there on the edge of the dock, coffee in hand, and thought, this is it. This is where my family would finally find peace. My name's Ethan Graves, former civil engineer, now full-time dad, part-time fixer of everything, and fully committed to never living under another HOA again. My wife Rachel and I had spent a decade dealing with condo boards, parking permits, and mailbox paint violations in the suburbs. We were done. So we cashed out, bought a little fixer-upper lake house out in Clearwater, and left the madness behind. The property wasn't big, but it backed right up to a private cove, surrounded by woods and deer trails. Best part? It was clearly outside the boundaries of the local HOA. That was in bold on the listing. I triple-checked the survey map and even had a lawyer confirm it. No HOA, no politics, no fake fines for letting my daughter chalk the driveway. We moved in the first week of June. By the end of the month, Rachel was baking pies again. My son Noah built a rope swing from the big oak tree behind the shed. Nights were campfires and laughter. Barefoot walks down the gravel path to the dock. For the first time in years, we breathed. Really breathed. Life slowed down. And for a while, it felt perfect. But then, the letters came. Plain envelopes, no logo, no return address. The first one read, "You are in violation of Clearwater Lakeside HOA Code 9B. Please remove unapproved water filtration system within 10 days. I laughed. Honest to God, I laughed. Nice try, I said out loud, tossing it straight in the trash. I'm not even in your HOA, buddy. But that was just the beginning. What came next would shake everything I thought I knew about small-town peace and neighborly smiles. It wasn't just about codes or aesthetics. It was something deeper, something darker. And it started right there, by the water's edge. If you've ever dealt with a shady HOA or know someone who has, you're going to want to stick around. This story gets wild, and trust me, you won't believe how far it goes. So hit that like button, drop a comment with your own HOA horror stories, and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Because this is only the calm before the storm. I wish I could say the envelope was a one-off, a prank, a mistake, maybe some HOA wannabe with too much time and a clipboard fetish. But 2 days later, another letter came. This time, it wasn't just a violation notice. It was a warning. Failure to comply will result in further action. A lien may be placed on the property if unresolved. A lien on my home? My blood ran cold. I reread the line twice, then checked the envelope again. Still no return address, no official header, nothing to suggest this was anything other than a scare tactic. Rachel looked over my shoulder, brow furrowed. But we're not in an HOA. I know, I said, but somebody really wants us to think we are. I made a few calls, no answers. The number on the notice was disconnected, so I drove down to the actual HOA office for Clearwater Lakeside just to clear things up. The woman behind the glass gave me the fakest customer service smile I'd ever seen. When I explained my address and situation, her smile barely twitched. You share lake access with several HOA properties, she said. That places you within our influence perimeter. I blinked. Influence perimeter? Yes, sir, she continued, tapping her keyboard like she was solving climate change. According to our extended charter, lots with overlapping visual access to HOA common water bodies may be subject to regulation. That's made up, I said flatly. She gave me a thin-lipped shrug. You'll need to bring your concerns to the board. They meet every third Thursday. And just like that, I knew we were in for a fight. That night I reviewed my property deed for the 10th time. Nothing had changed. My house was still outside the HOA boundary by a solid 800 feet. My lake access was deeded private, carved out from a sale in 1987. But the next morning things escalated. I was sipping coffee on the deck when my son Noah came running up from the shoreline, wide-eyed. "Dad, there's a man down there. He's taking pictures of our dock." I rushed down the hill and sure enough, some guy in a polo shirt and khakis was crouched near the water, snapping photos of my filtration system with the long lens DSLR like he worked for National Geographic. "Hey!" I shouted, stomping down the dock. "You lost?" He barely looked up. "Compliance documentation," he muttered. "Standard procedure." "You're trespassing," I said, stepping closer. "Get off my property." "You'll regret interfering," he said, snapping one last photo before calmly walking away, like he hadn't just threatened me on my own land. I stood there, fists clenched, heart pounding. That night I installed more cameras, motion sensors, floodlights. I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. But the next surprise came faster than I expected. 2 days later, I woke up to find a bright orange compliance sticker slapped across my front door. Not printed, handwritten in red marker. "Final warning, remove illegal infrastructure. Clearwater HOA code 9F. I ripped it off and stormed inside. "This is harassment," I told Rachel, pacing. "They're not just pretending to be an HOA anymore. They're acting like one." "What are we going to do?" she asked, voice shaking. I didn't answer right away. I just stared out the window, watching the trees sway gently across the lake. That peaceful view we fell in love with? It felt different now. Threatened. But here's the thing about people like me. We don't scare easy. You ever had a peaceful life turned upside down by people who think they know better? Let me know in the comments. And if you're still watching, hit that like button and subscribe. Because trust me, what's coming next? You won't believe what they tried to pull next. That night, as the sun dipped behind the hills, I spotted something in the yard. A small wooden stake driven into the ground by the tool shed. Bright pink survey tape fluttered in the wind, and written in tiny black letters, "Property line, Clearwater Expansion Zone. Phase 1. My stomach dropped. This wasn't about water filters. This was a land grab, and we were the first target. That stake was the last straw. I yanked it out of the ground so hard I nearly tore the grass up with it. The pink ribbon dangled from my fist like a war flag, shaking in the wind. Phase 1? These people weren't just playing games anymore. They were moving in. I showed it to Rachel. She didn't say a word, just stared at it like it was a snake. I'd never seen her look that pale. "Noah was playing back there yesterday," she whispered. "What if they'd been watching him?" That hit me like a gut punch. This wasn't just about property lines anymore. It was about us, our safety, our kids, our life. I called the county zoning office, A woman answered with a chipper tone that didn't match my mood. "I'm sorry, Mr. Graves, but I don't see anything in the system regarding your address and an active expansion." "Then how the hell did someone plant survey stakes on my land?" She paused. "Let me look into that and call you back." She never did. That night, I barely slept. Every creak in the walls made my heart race. I sat by the front window with my shotgun across my lap, praying I wouldn't need it. At 3:12 a.m., the floodlights in the backyard snapped on. I jumped up, heart thudding. Through the camera feed on my phone, I saw 2 figures walking near the filtration system, one carrying a clipboard, the other holding what looked like a crowbar. I hit the alarm on my phone, blaring the sirens and floodlights at full brightness. They bolted. By the time I got outside, they were gone, but not without leaving a courtesy notice, zip-tied to the pump. "Unauthorized aquatic modification in a shared visual basin, subject to fine and removal." This was warfare with paperwork. Rachel found me in the yard an hour later, staring out across the lake in the pale morning light. I hadn't said a word, just stood there, shaking, cold sweat running down my neck. "What do they want, Ethan?" she asked, voice trembling. "They want us gone," I said. "And they're not going to stop until we're broken, or both." Later that afternoon, I went into town to get supplies, extra trail cams, locks, and motion sensors. When I came back, I found something that made my blood run cold. A for sale sign. In our yard, with our address. And beneath it, scrawled in sharp black marker, "Pending HOA acquisition. Do not remove." Noah stood on the porch, confused. "Daddy, are we moving?" I ripped the sign out of the ground and threw it across the gravel. "No, son, we're not going anywhere." That night, I filed a police report. Sheriff's office sent a deputy out, a young guy named Ramos, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. I showed him the footage, the stakes, the sign. He just nodded and said, It's probably just a misunderstanding. HOA stuff can get messy. Messy? That word clanged in my ears like a slap. Officer, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. This isn't messy. This is illegal trespassing, harassment, and borderline stalking. He shrugged. Unless someone gets hurt, there's not much we can do right now. That was the moment I realized we were on our own. If you've ever been in a fight where no one shows up to help, you know how heavy that silence feels. Hit that like button if you're still with me, and subscribe if you're ready to see how far this rabbit hole goes, because what happens next? That's when things turn from creepy to dangerous. The next day, our mailbox was smashed in, Rachel's garden trampled, every single tomato plant crushed into the dirt. And Noah's swing? Cut down, rope slashed, left lying in the grass like a warning. That's when Rachel broke. She collapsed into my arms, sobbing. They're trying to make us snap, she said. They want us scared, paranoid, isolated. So we'll just leave? I held her tight, whispering through clenched teeth. They don't know who they're messing with. And that night I made a decision. No more playing defense. I was going to find out exactly who was behind this fake HOA and what they were really after. I always thought I'd left conspiracy theories back in my college days. But that night, sitting in my shed surrounded by boxes of paperwork, camera footage, and a half-empty thermos of cold coffee, I knew this wasn't paranoia anymore. This was a setup. The next morning, I called the one person who might actually understand what I was dealing with. Derek. An old friend from my engineering days, now a lawyer with a talent for sniffing out corporate schemes. You think it's just the HOA? I asked him over the phone. He was quiet for a second. Ethan, do you know what's buried under Clearwater? That's how I knew I was right to call. 2 days later, Derek drove up to the house in a dusty Jeep with a folder thick enough to crush a squirrel. He dumped it on my kitchen table and opened to a map. But this one had something I'd never seen before, a network of underground utility corridors marked with red dotted lines. One of those lines, it ran straight under our property. What the hell is that? I asked. That, he said, tapping the page, is a future fiber optic backbone line for a regional data center network. And your land? It's sitting dead center on their preferred route. So, what, they're building internet? No, Derek said grimly. They're building control. According to him, a shell company called Evercrest Holdings had been gobbling up rural land across the state, always just outside official town limits. They used fake HOAs, shady survey teams, and intimidation tactics to get property owners to sell cheap or fold under legal pressure. And Clearwater? It was just another pin on their map. Derek flipped to the document marked SES Private Development Division. That's who planted those pink flags, he said. They've filed a zoning adjustment request claiming your property is part of a shared development corridor, and they've backed it with falsified documents. My hands clenched into fists. They forged documents? Worse, he said. They have help inside the county office. That hit me harder than I expected. We weren't just up against greedy neighbors. We were fighting a machine, a network of lawyers, bureaucrats, and corporate hitmen, hiding behind smiley HOA newsletters and compliance stickers, and suddenly everything clicked. The envelopes, the surveys, the late-night visits, the camera blind spots. It was all coordinated. Hey, if this is blowing your mind like it did mine, hit that like button and drop a comment if you've ever been blindsided by something bigger than you thought. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next part, that's when things get dangerous. That night, I dug through every box in the attic, looking for one thing: the original deed from the 1987 split sale. When I finally found it, tucked between my grandfather's fishing licenses and an old photo album, I felt like I was holding the Holy Grail. It clearly stated, Lot 12A maintains independent lake access, separate from shared HOA jurisdiction. Any subsequent associations formed post-sale shall hold no governance over this property. Boom. Black and white. I scanned it, printed 5 copies, laminated 2, and taped 1 to my front gate. Beneath it, I stapled a handwritten sign: Visitors' property not in your OA. Trespassers will be prosecuted. It was petty, it was loud, and it was 100% deserved. But they didn't care. The next morning, I found a drone hovering over my backyard. Not a toy drone. One of those big quadcopters with high-res lenses and thermal sensors. It hovered for a full minute, then zipped off toward the lake. Later that day, Noah came home from school with a flyer in his backpack, a PTA newsletter from Clearwater Elementary with an ad on the back. Evercrest Living Luxury, smart homes coming soon to Clearwater Lakeside. Reserve yours today. I almost choked. They weren't just trying to scare us out. They'd already started marketing the land. Our land. I called Derek again. It's happening. They've already decided we're gone. He didn't hesitate. Then it's time to go public. We take this to the media, to the state attorney general, hell, to TikTok if we have to. But before we could do anything, something happened that sent chills down my spine. That night, just after midnight, I got a text from an unknown number. No name, no greeting, just 3 words. You've been marked. You've been marked. Those 3 words haunted me for days. I started checking every window twice before bed. I stopped letting Noah walk to the dock alone. Rachel began sleeping with the lights on, and honestly, I didn't blame her. This wasn't just corporate bullying anymore. This was a war on our peace, our safety, our sanity. But then, out of nowhere, came something I didn't expect, a knock on the door. It was just after sunset. The porch light flickered in the falling mist, and there stood Linda Holbrook, the soft-spoken older woman who lived 2 lots down. She always wore those floral cardigans and had a permanent smile that made her look like a retired kindergarten teacher. I'd waved at her maybe a dozen times. She'd never said much back, until now. She clutched a manila envelope to her chest, eyes darting left and right. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. I need to show you something, before it's too late." I let her in, half expecting her to hand me banana bread and ask to borrow eggs. Instead, she opened the envelope and spilled out hell, documents, emails, meeting transcripts, photos, handwritten notes from closed-door sessions at the Clearwater HOA. At the center of it all, Evercrest Holdings, disguised as a development partner, feeding money and pressure into the HOA board to push non-compliant landowners, like us, off their property. And the worst part, Linda was on the board. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice level. She looked like she'd aged 10 years just carrying that envelope. "Because I was part of it," she said, tears welling in her eyes. At first, I thought it was about community safety. That's what they told us. Modernization, revitalization, protecting property values. But then I saw the contracts. I saw who was signing the checks. She slid one paper toward me. A wire transfer from Evercrest to the personal account of Paul Wexler, the HOA president. 6 figures. "They paid him to target you," she whispered, "and others too." "You're not the only one." My stomach twisted. "How many?" 5 families, maybe more. But you're the one they couldn't break, and that's why they're getting desperate. Suddenly it all made sense. The drone, the fake sale sign, the vandalism, the late-night creeps with clipboards. They weren't just trying to scare me, they were trying to break me before the public ever knew what was happening. But Linda? She wasn't part of the plan anymore. She'd crossed the line. Now she was risking everything. If you've ever had someone flip from enemy to ally in your life, you know how wild that shift feels. If you're still with me, hit like, drop a comment, and subscribe, because this next part, it's where we flip the script. With Linda's help, we compiled a complete dossier, and the next morning Derek set up a meeting with a local investigative reporter, someone who wasn't afraid of stepping on the wrong toes. We gave her everything, the emails, the money trail, the fake zoning docs, Linda's affidavit. She nearly dropped her coffee halfway through reading. "This isn't just a land dispute," she said. "This is racketeering." Exactly. And we were just getting started. But while one door opened, another one slammed shut. That afternoon, Rachel's phone rang. Unknown number. She picked up and turned white as a ghost. I grabbed the phone from her hands. The voice on the other end was calm. Too calm. "You should have stayed quiet, Ethan. This isn't just about you anymore." Click. Rachel broke down in tears. "They know my number, Ethan. They know our names, our kids." I put my arm around her, but my jaw was tight, my whole body buzzing with fury. No more waiting, no more hiding. It was time to go public. That night, I uploaded a video. Not a rant, not a conspiracy, just the facts, the evidence, the photos. A voiceover of Linda confirming everything. And at the end, I stared into the camera and said, "My name is Ethan Graves. I'm a husband, a father, a homeowner, and I won't be intimidated off the land I paid for. If it happened to me, it can happen to you. And if you're watching this, know one thing, I'm not backing down." We hit publish, and within 24 hours it had 500,000 views. I thought uploading the video would be a turning point. I didn't expect it to be a detonation. Within 24 hours, the video had racked up 500,000 views. By day 2, it passed 1 million. Comments flooded in, people from all over the country, some sharing their own HOA horror stories, others calling it the boldest expose of the year. But what shocked me the most? People from Clearwater started coming forward. Anonymous emails, DMs, even hand-delivered notes left in our mailbox. People who had been silenced, bought out, or bullied into leaving their land. Elderly couples, small farmers, a single mom who'd fought them and lost everything. They all said the same thing. "You're the first one who didn't give in." I wasn't just fighting for my home anymore. I was fighting for all of us. The pressure on Evercrest and the Clearwater HOA mounted fast. Local news picked up the story first, then regional networks, then national ones, and when a clip from my video aired on a late-night segment of Real Justice with Grant Keller, everything went nuclear. That same night, I got a call from Derek. "You're not going to believe this," he said, breathless. "The state attorney general's office just reached out, and they're launching an official investigation into Evercrest and the Clearwater HOA board. They're sending a team." I hung up the phone and just stood there, stunned, my chest tight with disbelief and relief all at once. Rachel stepped into the room holding Emma. "Was that good news?" I nodded. "It's happening. They're finally looking." And for the first time in weeks, we smiled. But like any good storm, the worst hits right before the sky clears. The next morning, we found dead fish floating near the edge of the lake. At least a dozen. Rachel screamed for Noah to get away from the water. I ran down, pulled out one of the fish. It reeked of chemicals. I knew what they were trying to do. I checked the cameras. Sure enough, 246A, a truck with covered plates pulled up by the West Access Trail. 2 men in gloves carried large containers to the water's edge and dumped them in. Deliberate, targeted, criminal. I sent the footage straight to Derek. He forwarded it to the Attorney General's office and the Department of Environmental Protection. Within hours, a response. They were coming. In person, when the agents arrived 2 days later, they didn't just bring clipboards. They brought subpoenas, warrants, hazmat gear. They took water samples, pulled footage, documented every inch of the shoreline. And when they left, they had everything they needed. Meanwhile, inside the HOA office, panic had set in. Linda told us the board president, Paul Wexler, had resigned suddenly and flown out of state. She also shared one last piece of gold, a leaked internal memo. Evercrest had written up an exit strategy in case of exposure. It mentioned payouts, scapegoats, a list of people to blame, and at the very top of that list, me. They planned to paint me as unstable, aggressive, dangerous, a rogue veteran with a history of conflict and violent tendencies. That part hit hard. I'd served my country. I'd kept my family safe. And now they wanted to twist my life into a narrative that worked for them. Not this time. We published the memo, we posted the fish video, and we held a town gathering right in my backyard. Over 100 people showed up. Families, farmers, business owners, even the sheriff. A few folks who'd been too scared to speak before finally stood up and told their stories. The camera rolled the whole time. By the end of the night, the truth wasn't just out, it was on fire. If you've ever felt like the little guy standing up to the giant, this is your moment. Smash that like button if you believe in justice over power. Drop a comment and share this story, because they tried to hide the truth and now it's shining so bright they can't bury it anymore. 2 days later, federal agents raided Evercrest's local headquarters. Boxes of documents, laptops, financial records. 3 board members were arrested, including the vice president who'd signed off on the forged zoning maps. The charges: fraud, conspiracy, environmental crimes, racketeering, I watched it all unfold live on the news with Rachel and the kids on the couch beside me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like we could breathe again. You'd think watching federal agents raid the Evercrest offices would have been the end. But I knew better. When something that deep, that corrupt finally gets dragged into the light, it doesn't go quietly. It claws, it burns, and it always tries one last time to take you down with it. The morning after the raid, I got a call from a reporter at Channel 9 News. She wanted an exclusive sit-down, not just a clip, not just a comment, for the full story. Everything from the pink flags to the dead fish to the fake HOA citations. I hesitated at first. I wasn't trying to be famous. I just wanted peace. But Rachel took my hand and said something I'll never forget. They tried to control the narrative. Now you control the truth. So I said yes, filmed it right on our front porch. Me in my boots, Rachel sitting beside me, Noah and Emma peeking through the screen door. I spoke from the heart. I talked about the fear, the intimidation, the cameras, the drones, the midnight phone calls, the fire that almost took our home, the guilt of wondering, what if I had just sold and walked away? But most of all, I talked about why I didn't. Because this isn't just land, I said into the camera. It's legacy. It's freedom. It's the promise that no matter how big they are, no matter how much money they throw around, they don't get to take what's yours. Not without a fight. That interview went viral overnight. And what happened next? It blew the lid off everything. Other towns started checking their records. More fake HOAs were discovered. More families who had been bullied, bought out, or buried under paperwork until they gave up and left. Evercrest wasn't just operating in Clearwater. They had spread like a disease, quiet, methodical, hidden behind legal jargon and fake authority. But now the country knew, because we told them. I started getting letters, emails, voice messages, veterans, farmers, retirees, single parents, people who didn't have the resources to fight back, but now felt seen, felt heard. A man from Nevada sent me a picture of a pink flag with a boot print in the dirt next to it. The caption just said, "I'm not moving either." A woman from Tennessee wrote, "Your story gave me the courage to take my HOA to court. I won yesterday. Thank you." And then came the call I didn't expect. The state attorney general herself. "Mr. Graves, we're recommending full restitution for all impacted families, starting with yours. Your case will set precedent for new legislation on HOA abuse and zoning fraud. We weren't just winning our fight, we were rewriting the rules for everyone else. But not everything was sunshine and victory speeches. 2 nights after the Channel 9 interview aired, I found a dead rabbit nailed to our mailbox. Rachel cried. Noah asked if someone was trying to hurt us again. I didn't have an answer. I just took the rabbit down, buried it near the tree, and reinforced every camera on the property. Because when you shine a light on darkness, some shadows fight back. But this time, we weren't afraid. We decided to take our story even further. Derek helped us partner with a legal advocacy group, and together we launched a public online database. Every document, every video, every zoning map, every piece of fake HOA nonsense uploaded for anyone to see. We called it Project Clearwater, because the truth shouldn't hide behind red tape. And people came. Lawyers, journalists, senators. The sheriff even showed up one night with ribs and beer and sat on my porch saying, "You know, Ethan, you didn't just win, you lit a fuse. Whole damn state's watching now." I smiled, but I wasn't thinking about fame or politics. I was thinking about my kids, finally safe, my wife, finally sleeping through the night, and my land, still mine. If you've ever had to fight for something that mattered, really mattered, you know the pain, the fear, and the pride. So do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the loudest battle isn't with fists, it's with truth. And this time, we didn't just survive, we exposed everything. The strange thing about peace is, when it finally comes, it doesn't feel like fireworks or parades. It feels quiet. It feels like waking up and realizing the house isn't on edge anymore, that your wife is making coffee instead of checking cameras, that your kids are playing outside without you needing to stand guard. It feels like breathing again, really breathing. The land's still ours, the lake's still calm, and the signs? They're gone now. Every stake, every drone, every HOA threat ripped up, burned and buried, but the scars, they stay. We rebuilt, slowly. Rachel planted new tomatoes. Noah and I rebuilt the swing. Linda, God bless her, opened a small legal aid office downtown to help other families push back against HOA abuse. She's doing what she can to make things right. Clearwater isn't the same place it was when we moved here. It's better, because now people talk. They show up at town meetings, they ask questions, they watch, and that makes all the difference. But me? I haven't stopped watching either, because I know how power hides behind paperwork. I've seen how far people will go to take what doesn't belong to them, and I've learned one hard, undeniable truth. When good people stay silent, bad ones get louder. But when we speak up, when we stand our ground, everything changes. And maybe, just maybe, that's the beginning of something bigger than any of us. So if you're watching this right now, I want to say thank you for sticking with us through the chaos, for listening, for believing that one voice, one family, one piece of land matters. And if this story hit you in the gut, made you clench your fists or wipe your eyes, I ask just one thing. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and hit that subscribe button, because this war might be over, but there are more stories coming. And some battles, they're just getting started. Stay tuned. We're not done yet.